Hey, Doug.
Hey, what's going on?
Oh, what?
Oh, what?
the thing's not working.
Oh my God.
No, it's because I hit the reset button.
Yeah, why did you have to preload those sounds in there?
Yeah. That was a massive fail.
That is gutting.
No, I'll figure it out later on.
Are you going to upgrade those sounds at all? Like, are you going to play with them? What else are you going to get in there? Crickets is a good one.
No, I'm not. I'm not gonna because. What I'm gonna do is, apart from right now, I'm going to start recording the intro, the main, and the outro all in one go.
As in one sitting.
Yeah, so I'll be like, oh, hey, welcome to the Eurolife podcast, and then now we have Doug with it. Do the intro now.
I mean, that was amazing to watch. That is
not now.
I truly watched the working of a genius there. So how would you do it again?
No, it's because you've obviously just stepped off the plane, so this hasn't been prepared. So, but yeah, mate. No, I think, man, like as we were talking about earlier, like trying to get your workflow a bit slicker. Trying to, and because you just landed like an hour ago, and we're doing a podcast already. Because you said something to me. I think it was you about like content.
Was it good?
Was it good?
Okay, yeah, it was me.
yeah. But about how like the importance of content, and I think Patrick Beats talks about this as well. How Instagram is fine and great, but you need content that's searchable, that's evergreen.
Yeah,
that's always going to be there. And I feel like some of the best conversations I have are the ones that are not planned with people that I know.
I can't agree more. The guests that I like having on are exactly that. I don't need to prepare much. I don't need to draw answers out of them. I maybe need to steer them in a certain way, but certainly I like people on the podcast that have enough to say about themselves and about enough different range of subjects, whether they're experts in that field or not. Just that have something to say about those things, something interesting to say, and I think they do come out a little bit better when it's not too contrived. You've had loads. How many episodes you like?
This is
you're in hundreds.
90.
You're 90.
Yeah, about 90 now.
Actually, not that many, huh? How many is that? That's basically you've been doing. You do one a week, so it's almost
one a week.
So you've done 2 years.
Yeah, 52 weeks. Yeah, about that 2 years. Yeah.
Damn it. Yes, that's right. 104 will be 2 years.
Yeah, and I've never missed. The only one time I missed a week was when I did my 300-hour training, and that's the only time I ever missed a week, because I said at the start, before I started, it's the one thing I'm going to do no matter what is be consistent.
I mean, when you look up all the advice on starting these things, whether it's a YouTube channel, same with Instagram to a degree, it is having a schedule. It doesn't have to be any certain type of schedule. It just has to be a schedule. People know when something's coming out. And I think with podcasts being weekly, it's pressure though, huh? Like to find stuff to do. But I think it's good to have that thing in your life that you commit to, that you make time for. It certainly kind of keeps me organized, if nothing else, around that. Like that's the thing I gravitate around now. I missed my first one like 2 weeks ago. And my life was just too busy. Like, it's just got too much. Now I've gone back to doing stunts. It's just, I forget how all-consuming that is.
Doing the stunts?
Yeah, doing the stunt stuff. It's just, there's not a lot of time to breathe. So.
When Neville Ravikant said about making social contracts, and that's what I did when I started the podcast. I said, no matter what, come hell or high water.
Oh, geez, making me feel bad.
No, but we've all got our thing. Your thing, I would say, is video. You do video exceptionally well, whereas I lack on that. And my thing is maybe the podcast. Like that's my one thing that I put most of my effort into, because you can't do everything really well.
It's so true. That's what I was finding when I had time to do the podcast and the videos. That was a big week. It was a big week making content, and where I do the content is quite far from me, the videos. So that's a big day. And when you're doing your videos, there is limits, or are limits. I don't know. Someone will have to pick us up on that, on how many you can do in the day for them to be fresh and good. Especially if you're doing I was doing those workouts too. So you are it's a tough day to be doing loads of them. So I try to get 4 done a day, and then edit them, and then. I mean, we were just talking about technological problems, but my Premiere Pro just decided I did 19 out of 20 videos edited, and then the 20th one. I'll have to try again now. I actually had to step away for it because it upset me so much. It was 2 weeks of trying everything I could find on the internet, going, I'll try that. That didn't work. Try that. Going really deep into forums, going to really geeky places. Got someone over to my house to look at the computer. He couldn't fix it. You know it's bad when the guy that's come over to fix your computer asks you the first thing that you ever did. Have you done this? And you're like, this guy's looking at the same hymn sheet I did. You know, he's no expert. He was like, you tried switching it off? Oh, fine. Get out. Get out. So, yeah. But I would like to get back to that stuff for sure. Something I might be doing with another studio in London coming up, doing a video for them, which I'm kind of keen on. But they want me to do it in Bali or Sri Lanka, wherever I go that's nice next. Which presents certain problems because you take your cameras with you, find a location, so on and so forth. Problems and opportunities. I don't know if you know that the Chinese symbol is the same.
What do you mean? Problems, opportunities? Chinese symbol?
Well, actually, threat. The Chinese symbol for threat is also the Chinese symbol for opportunity.
Really?
Yeah. Not like it looks like it. It's the same thing. Which is exactly what... isn't that a thing in business you do? It's like an acronym.
Oh, the SWOT analysis.
That's exactly what it is, isn't it?
Yeah.
Strengths, weaknesses, opportunity, threats. Yeah.
Exactly.
I knew it was in the recess of my brain somewhere.
Yeah, 2x2 table, yeah.
And then you work out where a good place to be is. Does anyone do it? Does that work? Or do you come up with the concept for the business you're going to do and then do all this later when you want people to give you money? And you kind of fudge the facts, you know?
Yeah.
All the business owners I know don't do that. They go, I want to do this.
Yeah, I think planning is overrated. I really do.
And I feel the same. Not that planning is bad, but people seem to get stuck in the planning phase. They get really bogged down. Like this. Like when you started this, I'm sure there were some hiccups with starting the podcast. And there were things you could never have planned for. Something always comes up that wasn't in the video that said, okay, best way to start a podcast. You listen to all that stuff, you watch all that stuff, but you can only retain a certain amount of information. And then you start doing it, and inevitably you will do something different to how they did it. There'll be slight nuance changes, like we just saw. There's a firmware update. So when you look in someone's tutorial, it's from 2019, which may as well be a decade ago. Like that kind of thing gets to you. And I think people get stuck in that planning phase, whether it's a change in their life or relationship or anything. And it only ever is a thing that they thought of doing once, you know?
Well, before we started recording, we were talking about how people want to start podcasts or they don't want to. But if they do, how many people want to but never do? And when you want to do something like this, the amount of work it takes before it actually starts is incredible. And you hit so many roadblocks that it'll just put you off, and it requires a lot of mental determination to keep trying to figure things out, especially if you're not very technical. But then once you do that, once you have that set up, then all that work is done, and then it gets easier and easier the more you stick out the process. And
I think you learn something. You learn. How can I say? You don't just learn the solution to that problem. You learn ways to find solutions that aren't necessarily the same for everyone. So you get to know this thing in front of us. You get to know the roadcast well. So you make a few mistakes, and you're like, I don't even know what this menu is. Fast forward 4 years from now, and you're like, that I know where that is. Or maybe not 4 years, even less, 4 months. You'll be like, oh, I know where that menu is. I've seen it before by mistake. You know, and that's what ends up happening with these things. It's like putting in the legwork. And you may get lost a few times, but you get to know the labyrinth that is your data, that is your technology, that is the podcast you're going to do. And you get to know it so well that you know where all the crypts are, so you never get lost again. And you got all the keys now. Maybe the first few months is you trying to find the keys to all the different rooms that unlock different things, and you don't always know where they are, but you get there, and you don't forget.
No, exactly.
It's so funny. You make that mistake once, you're like, oh, now I know. But it's kind of, those things are related. How hard you've had to work to get the solution seems to be related into how long it'll take for you to forget something. I think those two things are related. You know? Same thing, like I've got friends, I show them stuff on Premiere Pro. They have to keep asking me because they don't learn how to solve the problem. they learn how to ask me. There's a big change. There's a big difference.
Yeah, and also as well, sometimes you forget how far you've come. I don't mean like financially or status wise, but how much you've learned. Say within the last year. Say, for example, now I still come up against roadblocks every day. But I remember back to a time not so long ago where I was thinking, I would love to have a podcast. How the hell do you do it? I don't know anyone else that has one. I remember actually speaking to quite a well-known podcaster. His name is Danny Pomploon, and he's in the States. He's like, the guy is, if you were going to consider, say, someone a yoga entrepreneur, he does it all.
Really?
He has his own app as well.
Oh, snap. That's serious, yeah.
Yeah, but I remember he said to me on the phone when I did a remote podcast with him, and he said, "Oh, everyone has a podcast now," and I said, "No, they don't. They don't. It's a really small number. I mean, I've had people that have asked me about how to start a podcast. I send them information. You were saying the same thing as well, that you send people information but they don't start it because it can be a bit overwhelming. But I heard someone say something great the other day. It was like, if you don't have an online presence, you're not building something for the future. You're not creating content. You don't exist online, as it were. And I want to start, Doug, and this is something I've just recently thought about, is speaking directly to camera. I don't know what you would call that.
Vlogging.
I suppose, yeah, vlogging. But it's not going to...
One second.
Yeah.
I don't want this to... Oh, yours is really quiet. If I touch the mics on my one, it goes like... Dun-dun.
Oh, yeah. No,
this is really good.
Yeah. I want to do videos where I'm just talking directly to the camera about things that people ask me, and therefore I can put it on a high quality video, good audio, and it's there forever. And who's really inspired me is, I mentioned last time, is Pat Divilly. So I actually went to his masterclass last week. Jenny Keane was there as well, actually. And he does a bunch of videos on YouTube. He's done them just talking direct to camera. And what I noticed was, in fact, how few views they have. But yet he's a superstar in Ireland. And
what kind of subject he's talking about?
So, for example, when I say few views, by the way, let me just put it into context. You know, some of his videos that are a year, 2 years old have got 300 views, 400 views, maybe less than 1,000.
Yeah.
But those people that are watching him really love him, which is so important. You can look at someone like Jake Paul, for example.
Crazy.
And it's millions.
Mad.
And they just
same with Rice Gum, H3H3. Like, well, not H3H3. I think they kind of reality check themselves, but certainly the Rice Gums and the Jake Pauls and the KSI. You're right. Those views are mental on those things.
But if you look at that and you think that's someone who's a YouTuber, therefore I'm not going to get there, you're never going to start it. And this is what I tell myself. I look at Pat, for example. He has, like I said, a few hundred views in his videos. But then you go to his seminar, which I went to last week, 600 people in a room, and they're all cheering for him, and everyone has their notepads with them, and everyone is really engaged with him. You know, they're true fans, like Kevin Kelly talking about 1,000 true fans. And so, did you ask me a question there?
Should I have?
No, I thought you did. I thought you did.
Maybe I don't know, but I'm enjoying this train. I'm on. Choo choo. Let's go. So this is great.
What I noticed, a few takeaways. I haven't spoken about this because it only happened last week. A few takeaways. First, how nervous he was. Incredibly nervous. Like he was at the start. You know, he was kind of trying to get his words together. I mean, he was good, but you could tell he was nervous. And I was like, wow, you don't see. Like, say, Tony Robbins, for example, he is always ultra confident. Doesn't seem like he ever gets nervous and stuff. But that is actually not that endearing. You know, it's a bit overpowering. I don't think Tony Robbins, his style goes down that well in England, Ireland.
Oh, that's very American.
Very American.
Very American.
Yeah. And the whole, it's almost like quite aggressive in a way. Whereas Pat is... very humble, quite like, as I mentioned before, he's quite introverted, but it's so inspiring to see someone like that who's really crafted and grafted to master this skill of speaking. And even though, and he said himself, like he came in and he was like, oh my God, I can't believe how many people are here. He's looking around like just gobsmacked. He had planned to do it in the Gibson Hotel, but so many people had booked in, he had to upgrade at the last moment to the Clontarf Castle. And everyone was hanging on his every word. And what I wanted to talk to you about, Doug, actually, in terms of teacher training, is it was a 2-hour talk. I would say every 15 minutes, we were doing an activity, maybe 20 minutes. He'd get everyone to stand up. So give you an example. Okay, he'd talk about dreams. What is your dream? Write it down. So we'd write it down. Everyone had a pad, and a pad and pen was given to everyone as well, if they didn't bring one. So you're interacting because you're physically doing something instead of just listening and sitting there. And then when you write it down, instead of him being like, okay, that's great, next thing, he goes, now stand up, turn to someone you don't know, and you have 1 minute to explain that to them. And then they take their turn. And at the start, you're kind of like, oh no, this is awkward. But then you kind of get into it, you know, and that, if you do that every 15, 20 minutes in a 2-hour talk, you're in it. You're involved in the talk, as opposed to, people can't concentrate for 2 hours just sitting there. And I found this fascinating. You asked me, this was the question you asked me about what videos he does. So he does things like mindset, how to be more confident, how to plan, to set goals, this type of thing. And in the context of teacher training, and this is why I think it's so important, because obviously you're getting involved in teacher training now, which you can talk about shortly. There's a studio here in Dublin, and they had a teacher come in who's like a legend teacher, worldwide legend, older teacher. Came in to teach one of the modules for or I think a part of the teacher training. And for 8 hours of that day, everyone was just sitting listening. And it was just the teacher telling us stories about, you know, what they did back in the day and this. And it was just simply sitting listening. And the feedback that I heard was that a bunch of people were like, I'm out. I didn't sign up for this. I can't sit for 8 hours and just listen to someone, because now we're different. We're changing as humans. Maybe because of the phones or entertainment or the media, I'm not sure, but we need to be stimulated. You know, every 20 minutes or so, or half an hour maybe, we need a reinforcement of the information we've just learned through a game, through an activity, through a group exercise, something. And that was fascinating for me. I made me think, like, you need to change how you teach to suit your audience. You can't, just because you've taught yoga for 30, 40 years, and you may know way more than everyone else will ever know, which is great, and that's brilliant. But if you can't deliver that in a way that gets into people's minds that they can absorb it, it's useless for them, as it were. It's great for you as the guru, and that made me really think about how I deliver content, because I find that I plan so much, I never get a chance to teach it all, because I've planned so much. And instead of doing that now, I'll make my plan, and I'll try and time it like every half an hour. I'll put in red an activity, an exercise that we're going to do together. And the thing is, Doug, the activity doesn't even have to necessarily relate directly to the content. It's just to get people moving, interacting, talking. Ideally, if it is related
somehow, and even if it's tenuously linked.
Exactly. Yeah. But that was a big takeaway for me, because I think, sorry, I'm going on a bit here, but like
this is good. I mean, this is pretty much what I asked you like earlier this week.
Yeah.
These are gems. This is exactly what I need. Yeah.
Great. I'm glad. A big killer for productivity, or simply starting, is that we, and I'm talking about me here obviously as well, want everything to be perfect. When I did my first weekend of teacher training, I had every single thing planned, where I was going to stand, what I was going to do with my body language, where everything was planned. I had everything word for word what I was going to say for 6 hours. It was too much. I couldn't deliver it that way. But what I now realize is what I need to know is why. What do I want people to take away from the day, whatever the module is? What are the main takeaways? How am I going to deliver that? What are the key points? And how am I going to reinforce it? I.e., how are the people going to show me that they understand through either a game or an activity? And that's it. That is it. they don't realize it. If you cover 90% of the curriculum for that day, what I've realized then, that 10% you don't cover, you can teach it the next module. You can throw it in as almost like a refresher. So guys, last weekend we did this, and here's a recap. And also we can think about this as well, anything you missed out on. That's been a big game changer for me. It's made I don't plan. I suppose I do plan. When I say planning is overrated, I mean long-term planning is overrated.
No, I think
like life planning. Someone asked me on Instagram, sorry, Doug,
I saw that. I saw your answer.
There's a couple like, what's your plan for the future? I don't have a plan.
Just on that quickly too, the spam messages.
Yeah, what's that about?
I don't know. I actually had a guy from here. I was saying, any good podcasters, what's amazing is for the first time ever, one of those spam things sounded like a sincere answer. And I was like, oh shit, I might actually I said something like, if you know someone who's interesting, put their name below. And someone said, hey, I just thought I'd get hold of you. I'm a musician in town and I'd love you to check out my stuff and we could talk about that. And I was like, oh
no.
And then I put another question, which was like with somebody saying like, who's your favorite, Kevin or Doug? And the same message came up. I was like, oh, motherfucker, he got me. He got me good, you know? I don't know what that's about, but it needs to stop. It's irritating.
Yeah.
Then to your point, planning, I agree. In a similar way, this is a funny thing, actually, that I said just this week. I said often when we're on set, like, you'll be given random things to do. As a stunt guy, every now and then you have to do some acting in front of camera, either right in front of camera or like on a B cam or whatever. Like maybe sometimes it's just a look, you know. But kind of the on-set joke is I tend to big up my role. So like if they give me a line, like I'll step away straight away and I'll start doing like voice exercises, even though it's like, hey, you know, like la 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 la, and then someone disrupts me. I'm like, whoa, I'm in the middle of something. Right? Yeah. Unique New York. So I'll do all that stuff. All right, I'll really mess around. But someone will be like, we love that one, you know, it'll be something silly. Like this week, you had to run outdoor, like look up and then run. You know, we just had to look up and then run, you know. And someone came in and were like, that was amazing, you know, like, and they kind of been sarcastic, but they're kind of joking too. And then there'll be an AD next to me. And they'll like
be a what next to you?
An AD, assistant director, which makes them sound a little more important than they are. Our first AD is like the general of the whole movie.
You just disrespected a whole.
But it is assistant director makes it sound like they're standing next to the director, going like, "I think this shot's good." Okay. They're not doing that. They range. The first AD pretty much is running the roost. The second AD has got important things. Third AD, same thing. But AD can cover all. He could be a runner, or she could be a runner.
Don't know what that is either.
Someone who's just locking off, making people don't walk past in the background.
Okay.
They could be stopping cars and engines. They just do whatever. So they rise up. Yeah. But then the ADs will then also just be helpers around set. So for instance, this week we're on 5 different floors, and this camera is coming up the stairwell. And as it comes up each floor, we need to make sure we run out on that timing so the camera catches us in its peripheral vision. And on each floor, it has to be an AD saying, now, on each floor, you know. Yeah. So they're important. They're integral to the thing, but they're not right next to the director, is my point. But anyway, they kind of board there, and the first AD's come in and said, that's perfect, you know, we like that, you know. And then the board AD will be standing there, and I'll say, I know what you're thinking. You're thinking, how is it I act so well? And I'll tell you, here's the trick. I don't act. I react. So some of them are like, oh, what a dick. Other than them find it funny. All right. So I do think I look at it. But to your point, to bring this back to yoga, I think that's what you got to be doing as a teacher. You have to be reacting. Like we discussed, the weird skill set that is to be a teacher means that you have to be able to do a few different things. One of those things is read the room. Is this the type of room that wants a joke right now? I usually err on the side of I hope so, because I'm going to do it anyway. But maybe they're not. Maybe that's not the right environment, you know. Are they going to be the type of room that are going to appreciate a hard class, or during the class, is it too hard? Can you see people really struggling? You know, so you got to change it. So to your point about planning being not useless, but you've got to be able to move. So you've got your rough plan. How then do you implement it? And do you have the confidence to change your plan on the go? Because you have to have that in the bag. I think to be a good teacher, you can't just stick steadfast to what you're going to do and go, I'm doing that no matter what. I wrote it in my book, therefore you guys are doing it. I think the same with the teacher training. You've got to read the room and go, this is not landing. Okay, let's change it up. That requires you to know the data really well. To ad-lib is a lot harder than to read off your notes. And I think that's what scares people. People don't want to go off script because they're like, I don't know. You know, maybe they do, but they don't feel like they know it well enough. It's so funny. I know so many teachers that have been teaching longer than me, who I think are great teachers and far more knowledgeable than I am, but they still haven't done workshops or teacher trainings or retreats. And it's just confidence. It's so much. And I see them like saying, I'm doing my first one. I'm like, oh, after 5 years. I'm like, it didn't, not that you have to do workshops or anything like that, but I just think you could do it. It sounds like you want to, but you haven't. You know, and I think confidence is a big thing. And I wonder how much of that is an important training tool to give students. I mean, you know what the number one fear in the world is?
Public speaking.
The second is death. So that means at a funeral, you'd rather be in the casket than doing the eulogy. Now that's mental. You know?
That confidence comes from the story we tell ourselves, right? And the story we tell ourselves, there's this great little acronym. It's like C for circumstance. So, for example, my circumstance now is say when I first started teaching yoga, I was 33 years old. 33 years old. And that was my circumstance. And then my view on that could be that I'm too old. And therefore, if my view is that way, my action is I don't take any action. And the result is I'm still doing what I'm doing. But in between that circumstance and the action is your perspective. And actually, I started listening to A Man's Search for Meaning by Viktor Frankl. Oh, mate. So he says Viktor Frankl survived the concentration camps of World War II.
I'm sure John Peterson's mentioned this book. That's why I recognize that title.
It's phenomenal. One thing he says is one of his main takeaway. He became a psychotherapist. So he was a psychotherapist before he got taken to the concentration camps. But the question was, how can someone spend so long in such dire circumstances and maintain a sense of humor, maintain their spirit, and survive? And it was that you have a stimulus and you have your response. And in between, in that space between, is where there's freedom and happiness. But that space between is how you choose to respond to that stimulus, which ties in hugely to yoga.
Yeah.
And when something happens, what is our perspective? What's the story we start telling ourselves? And that's where your confidence comes from. And I think that often when we're growing up, we have things that happen and we tell ourselves certain things. Like, for example, and I think language actually that you use your own self-narrative is really powerful. Like people say, I'm a shy person instead of I'm feeling shy. And this is something that it becomes, it's called there's such thing as a negative bias, or ANTS. What's the, I forget the actual acronym it's called, but essentially it's a negative bias where everything that happens to you see it in a negative light, and it's an actual kind of a neurological pattern that you can't get out of, and you become that person. It's like someone who moans a lot; it becomes just the thing a part of their personality. And Pat DeVilly said something great. He said something like, instead of waiting to feel right to take the action, and that will give you the feeling. So the other way around. And I think that's so true of what you mentioned there about people not teaching workshops. When I have taught for years, when I did my 300 hour, they asked, okay, put your hand up if you taught public class. There was 30 people in the room. More than half people put their hand up because most of them are teachers. Put your hand up if you taught a private, fewer hands came up. Put your hand up if you taught a workshop, hardly any hands came up at all. And these some people have been teaching for 5-10 years. Put your hand up if you've done a retreat, and it just less and less hands came up. My hand was pretty much up for most of it, and I'd only be teaching for a year and a bit at that stage. And it was, and my it's very simple. My reason was, why not? And in that environment, one of the people who have been teaching for years got very upset and said that the market that they're in, the country that they're in, there's a kind of a yoga elite, you know, the young, pretty, blonde girls they're the ones that have got popular Instagram and they get all the business, whereas they're kind of left in the shadows. And this person was really upset, was crying, and it was going on a bit, you know. That's the thing about teacher training is people can be like, you can get steered off course so easily. It's very hard to stick to a curriculum when someone has something they want to bring out and everyone kind of gets involved. So this person was really upset about it, and everyone else was chiming in saying they're there, you know. I had to put my hand up and say, look, you know, this is my opinion. You're being a victim, and you need to see what positives you have. What do you have to offer that they don't? Simple as that. And it didn't go down well because it seems like you're being quite harsh. But
I'll go further. I don't even think it has to be what do you have that they don't. It's just what do you have, because they can't do workshops all the time. So you could have an identical skill set to them, offer the same things, and you would still get people. You know, it's not even having one up on them. You could just offer something. You know, I'd interested, had this person like put one on and no one came.
I don't know.
You see, like that's interesting.
Yeah, and even if they didn't come, that's no reason to not do another one.
I've done ones when no one comes, and you're like, well,
yeah,
well, that one doesn't work. All right, next. But I realize this about myself. My biggest, well, how can I say? Definitely the thing that holds me back the most is my vanity. So my thing was, if no one comes, that must mean no one likes me. I can't handle that. So if I think there's a chance no one's going to come, I'm not going to do it. Instead of going, if no one comes, no one comes. They could not come for a plethora of reasons. Maybe one of those is they don't like me. Even if that is the case, so what? But I've got to try. You know, I think there's a great quote, which a man's reach exceeds his grasp. And so it should, otherwise what else is heaven for?
Oh, nice.
That's the whole idea, is that, but I maybe go a little bit too far on those things. I get a little bit excited. I'm like, right, retreats, let's go. I tried my first retreat, nothing.
Like, did you lose money then?
No, luckily the setup on that one was like a co-host thing. So they pulled out. They were like, look, no one's booked on. Oh, it's like 2 months to go. So luckily that was fine. But I had also, I didn't have like a public class. I just used to teach like every couple of months.
Yeah.
So I didn't know what I thought, but I thought I want to try. So I did, and it didn't work out. So I was like, okay, next, how do we do this? You know? And I think that's important.
Yeah, but in that circumstance, you could have attached a very different perspective, and then the action would have been, and the result would have been completely different. But on that story, because there's a lot to learn from that situation. Tony Robbins, in one of his seminars, a lady was crying. You've heard about this, but a lady was crying, really upset about something that happened to her. And someone went over to give her a hug. And Tony Robbins was like, sit the fuck down, or don't fucking hug her. It was like, whoa, Jesus. And Tony Robbins' rationale was, every time she cries about this topic, someone hugs her. So it's a bit like a baby or a puppy. Every time the puppy scratches the door, if you keep answering the door every time, I'm talking me personally now, because obviously I have Alfie, people are telling me, ignore the scratching. Sometimes, because they know every time they scratch, you're going to come, and then they'll never stop scratching. And the same as my friend had a baby recently, and I said, what's it like having a baby? What do you do? Do you sleep? He said, what happens is the kid is born, they're in their bed, they'll cry all the time. So the first time you go in, you comfort them. It's actually a technique. Comfort them, and you do whatever you need to do. The next time you go in, you comfort them, you don't pick them up. The next time you go in, you sit next to them, you speak to them, but you don't touch them. And then you gradually, eventually at the end of the bed, then all of a sudden you don't go in at all. And this has to be done with adults as well. you know. And there is an argument to say, like, have some compassion, for God's sake, and give someone a hug if they need a hug. But if this is a cycle that they find themselves in all the time, and they're always, it's someone else's fault, and this is the negative bias thinking, when something bad happens, it's someone else's fault always, instead of taking accountability and saying, what can I do?
Hey, look, I'm on board. I agree with that. But yeah, I think that'll always be the counter argument, is where is the compassion? I mean, the counter to that is, well, is it compassionate to hug someone now and they feel like this again later? Or is it compassionate to help them find a way to find their own solution? This is what we've got to do, right? You got to find your own solutions. And I think accountability is definitely one of those things. I mean, I've just had a situation where 2 trees have blown down in my garden from the storm. I got massive trees in my garden.
Storm Kira.
Yeah. Taking out the neighbor's garden shed, the other neighbor's trampoline, and the fence. So I got these huge trees there. Now, in January, they were like, do you want to update your insurance? I said, sure. Clicked it. Said, no, actually you need to call us. So I called them, no answer. I was like, oh, I'll deal with this later. I haven't dealt with it. Now this happens, right? The initial reaction is always, that's bullshit. You know, I can't believe this has happened to me. The other way to look at it is, well, I didn't like that tree anyway. And I wanted to take it down, and I couldn't because it was a protected tree. So I wasn't actually allowed to cut it down 4 years ago when I tried to. So now it's kind of done me a favor in that. I do have to foot the bill, fine. But that is a direct consequence of me not being on top of things, you know, and I very much subscribe to the order and chaos concept out there, that you need a good balance of both. And I think my life it tends towards chaos a lot more than order, and I like it like that. But this is the ramification that insurance is lapsed every now and then. I'm thinking, I'm too old for this. I've got to that's for me to get better. That's the part I need to bring to my life more. I need more order, not more chaos. You know, my life is pretty chaotic as it is. You know, I don't really have a schedule. I do what I want most of the time. So I need to start bringing this in. But it only works if you go, that's my fault. And when it comes to yoga, I don't know where I heard this, but the idea of karma isn't, I may be incorrect. I may be talking out of turn, but I like this. So I'll perpetuate it. So if you want to join me and believe in this, then please do. Karma is different to the sense of other religions where there's a deity that's punishing you or rewarding you. Karma, I think, is supposed to be a direct relationship to the things you do. So the literal idea of what you put out, action comes back to you. Not in I kicked a dog, so now I got struck by lightning. You know, more like I kicked a dog, and the next time I try to kick it, it bit me. It's more, I understand that is more to it.
Yeah, I believe it's not cause and effect like people think, but instead it's of action.
Yeah, you've started a ball rolling.
Yeah.
And if you don't watch where that ball's going, it's going to knock something down, like a tree in your garden. And then you're going to have to pay for it. So that is, and you have to look at those things and go, God, all right, that is something. That is something I need to watch. And I think that accountability thing is so important. It's not comfortable, but you get more comfortable with doing it more and more, I think. Certainly.
And this is actually something that has, like with me and Rachel, we said to ourselves when we first started going out, we're never going to be the couple that blame each other and say, well, you didn't do this, or well, you didn't do that, and hold things, or say things like, oh, you would say that. This type of talk. What I do, and I'm very conscious of, is I'll always take accountability as much as I can to be like, what could I have done different in that situation? And then when you start doing that, your partner, girlfriend, boyfriend, wife, whatever, husband, will often do the same. You know, so you'll say, you know, I should have, say for example, the dog, I should have brought him out earlier. Say he wheezes in the house, and then they will, and then they will say often, yeah, well, I could bring him out a bit more myself, and it becomes that type of communication as opposed to, oh, this would happen to me.
It's like cooperation, right?
Yeah, exactly.
And the opposite's true too. You should have done this. Oh, well, you should have done.
It never ends.
Yeah. What's funny is, especially in amateur fighting, there's a 1-for-1 thing where you throw a technique and someone can't help themselves, but they'll throw the exact same technique back at you.
Yeah.
And that's just how we are. You know, as humans, I think we lack a bit of imagination when it comes to combat.
You shut up. You shut up.
Yeah, exactly. You got to get it. You're an idiot, me.
Yeah.
So I think that is interesting. It's it reminded me of a Jordan Peterson talk I listened to recently. He's been, as we were saying, like he's been putting out a lot of old content. It was his talks in Australia, and he said a funny thing happens when you get into an argument with your partner and you agree with them. They're not crazy about it to start with, because when you argue with someone, especially when you're very close, part of it is you want a solution, but another part is you want to shout. So when your partner says, you should have done this, she goes, I should have. You've robbed them of that next part, which is like, what? But I'm not done.
They're not expecting that.
Yeah. And he said that's a very good way of disarming someone.
Yeah, because I was saying to you today is the first day this week I've actually felt good. I've been really tired, just waking up at 3 a.m., 3:30, stuff like this because of the dog. But what I realized, if I get up early at that time, if I work out, so I've started going to the gym now, like as well as doing yoga, at 5:30, and I do that at 6:30, and then I'm magic. But that one day that I didn't do anything, I kind of just did a bit of light stretching. I was off the whole day because I hadn't let out that tension. The tension has to come out, and if it doesn't come out, then it comes out on your partner or with tiny things, Whereas how I was today, I had did a good yoga practice, and then I went for a swim, and the whole day nothing can bother me. I think it's all connected. That energy has to come out some way. But yeah, it's the mindset. I really, because this weekend I was telling you I'm teaching the business of yoga to the teacher trainees, and I've been told by some people that have done teacher trainees, especially in India, that this isn't covered a lot. Like you go do your teacher training in India, for example. This is just anecdotal, what I've been told. You come back to Ireland and you're like, right, what? How do I actually get work? And I think there's a bit of a snobbery around that. I think that people feel like, oh, well, you're talking about business and yoga, it's a bit distasteful. But ultimately, if you don't know how to develop the business side, the marketing side, you won't get to share your yoga. But before the business and the marketing happens, the mindset has to happen. I actually, because I've been thinking about this a lot, I think about how am I going to teach people to cultivate the right mindset to keep going. And what I realized for myself is that I overcompensate. And I haven't said this to anyone before, but this is just the truth. I will actually go around my house saying things like, you're the best. No one can. It's embarrassing. I know. I'm embarrassed to say this. But this is
I like it.
This is overcompensation because I feel insecure about certain things. So what I'll say is like, that person can do it. Why can't I do it? I can do it. Or you know what? No one can compete with me. I can. This podcasting thing, I'm gonna like knock out. And I do this. And Rach sometimes is like, Rach should be like, you're nuts. Like, what are you going on about? And I'm doing it because I got no one else to do it for me. It's like I'm being my own coach, essentially. So, if you're going back into your corner after a difficult round.
Get in there, champ.
Yeah, come on, champ. You're the best. You're the best. I don't actually think I'm the best. I don't think that exists. And it's a kind of nonsense talk, really. But it's like listening to a Rocky song when you're going for a run. It gives you that boost. And if it can give you that boost to get off the couch and be like, you know what? I couldn't figure out Adobe Premiere Pro or whatever. I'll give it another go. Come on, champ. And that now I realize that mindset can actually be destructive in a way, because the whole thing of thinking like you're competing with other people is not healthy, because there's always going to be someone else who's going to be have more followers than you, be better looking, be more popular, whatever it is. So how sometimes the narrative I have in my head is actually not that helpful, but it's better than
the alternative,
which is for me, well, who are you to do anything? Who's not going to listen to you? So I'm trying to cultivate a better narrative in my head, and hopefully like share that with people.
Well, the business of yoga thing, if people aren't into it, the only people I think have a leg to stand on saying I'm not into that is anyone who's going to teach yoga without charging for it. The minute you do that, that is now business. So if you're going to buy into that bit, the rest is fair game. Like, then you need to know all the other things. How is it you sell a workshop? How is it you get your first few gigs? If you're just going to do it for free, then that's a totally different thing. If that's going to be your vocation, then so be it. But I think the business part is important because it's become an educational tool, right? People are coming through a curriculum to be a teacher. One of those things about being a teacher is they need to be able to make enough money, assuming they don't have another job that's going to do it for them. So that, I think it is an important part to put into it. I mean, it seems like it's something that doesn't fit into the yogic mindset. I understand that. But if people are going to teach it, then that's how it's done in the West, you know?
Yeah, I mean, if like, you know, to pay a mortgage, you need money. And if someone, it sounds so obvious, but money is how much value you attribute to something. And if you don't value yourself to a certain level, other people won't either. And I think that's the difficult thing, to truly believe that you're worth it.
Yeah. To quote L'Oreal.
Yeah. So to believe that you're worth it, and that takes a bit of time, and then eventually you become that person. You become the person who has the workshops, has the retreats, charges X amount, and then it's just the way it is. You know? And if someone doesn't like it, I've had people say to me more than once, "That's way too expensive." I go, "Okay, cool, no worries. I'll put my effort into something else." And then instead of doing something that is, I feel I'm not being compensated for properly and wasting all that time, I can invest into other things that are going to give me a better return and more satisfaction as well. Yeah. It's a real shitty feeling when you're teaching and you're getting paid pittance. Sorry, Doug.
No, I was just going to say, I think it's a two-way street. Maybe people might misunderstand when you say, I'm going to give myself a ludicrous hourly rate, which is something Naval Ravikant talks about all the time. All right?
Yeah.
You know, I think two things happen. One, you realize your worth, but two, I think you start to make yourself worth that. As in, if I say to myself, what do I want to get paid when I do workshop? Okay, I've set this number on it. My next question is, how do I make myself that valuable? Not simply, you should give me this money because, you know, I'm Doug Robson and therefore you should get it. Instead, I'm thinking, what is it I need to learn? What are the things I need to bring to these things that will make it valuable?
Yeah.
That will make someone go, actually, I think that is worth it. I'm not trying to rip someone off. I'm trying to set that value, inherently be worth that amount that people will pay it, you know, for a myriad of reasons. You know, I'm trying to work out every time I go to someone's teacher training that I respect, I'm thinking, what is it they're giving me here that I can't get somewhere else? Why did I pay for this?
Exactly.
You know, and I need to take that on. I'm fortunate that I have this other work. It's weird though. I have the stunt work that can support me, which means I don't have to be so money dependent on the yoga, which means I can take more chances. But that's also, you know, there's limits to how much I can do that. You know, at some stage I would like to move across here, but until that stage, and cross to yoga, not necessarily Dublin, although I do love Dublin, as you may tell from how often I've been on here and how often I've been in this city. But yeah, that's the idea. I want, and I think that's the cool thing about yoga is you get a lot of older teachers, lots, and it seems to be the more experience they have, the better they are. That's awesome. And, you know, flip that to stunt work. The old guys all walk with limps and like have hearing aids, and I'm like, shit. Like, you know, so I like the idea of working in the subject matter. And I think this is what really appeals to me about yoga, is that you get better the more you do it. Nothing else, just the more you do it, whether that's your own practice or teaching. If you do it a lot, you tend to get better. You tend to take on more information. And that could be doing yoga in terms of doing actual classes, teaching classes, going to people's workshops, doing your retreats, going to talks, doing your own research, and you're accumulating this knowledge, which is making you, and we don't see this a lot, you see it in jiu-jitsu, where people, the young, strong kid doesn't have the advantage over the old black belt. He doesn't. I like things like that. That appeals to me. One, because I'm getting to be the old guy. So I want somewhere where every time I do my job, I'm better. You know, and there's not a lot of jobs that have that. You know, someone used to ask me what I used to do at the bank, and I used to joke and say I press Shift F5 because like that's what it felt like. Like I knew how to do that. Like I knew how to do that quick spreadsheet, which was of no use to, like, that was non-transferable. That was not, oh, I'll go to this next bank and press Shift F5. Okay, but what if I need to write a book? No, well, is there Shift F5 in the book? No, well, then I'm out, you know. Whereas this is different. I'm accumulating knowledge as I go through it. And if I'm vigilant and I'm mindful every time I teach and every time I interact with people that I respect, then I'm getting better. I'm getting more knowledgeable, and I have more value to other people in the strictest sense of information currency.
Exactly.
You know, non-value of everyone's valuable. You understand?
Yeah. No, absolutely. Information currency is a great way of saying it. Look, when I go home from a teacher training, I write ferociously for like an hour afterwards at all the stuff that I could have done better, that worked, that didn't work. And then because I know that it's never going to stop. Now, the thing is, you can teach for years, but you have to want to get better as well. You don't just get better. I mean, obviously, with you comes experience, but it's that thing of try something, plan it, try it, assess the feedback, refine it, go again. And that process means that as we get older, I realize my body's eventually going to start failing me. You know, I'm not going to be teaching handstands when I'm 60, probably. I don't know. Mind you, I think possible. Yeah, I am happy with how I'm aging. But anyway, that sounds very arrogant. But like, I'm like, compared to when I was 20, I'm 38 in a couple of weeks now. But when I was 28, I couldn't do any. I mean, I was weak.
Likewise.
And just, you know, whatever. But yeah. But what I'm getting at is like, you know, Father Time is going to catch up to us all. But your mind and the knowledge you collect is always going to be then just gather as long as you are willing to refine it and how you deliver it. And that's what I absolutely adore about this profession, is the craft of actually teaching. And this is why I'm so interested now in shifting and focusing a bit more on how to teach like the mindset and the stories we tell ourselves. And I find that so interesting because it's been so I hate using this word, but transformational for me. You know, like Pat Divilly said it as well. I should get like a quid for every time I say Pat Divilly, but about it, I resonate with this resonated with me massively, and I've talked about this before, but how like circumstance when you're a kid is you fail an exam. The story you tell yourself is I'm thick. If you're thick, then you're going to try and you want to be consistent with your past, so you'll do things that reinforce that. So I'm going to be a little bit naughtier now. I'm going to start messing around a bit more. And therefore, that's now my identity. I'm now that person. I'm the thick guy in the class. And how we don't realise these patterns. You don't realise them at all. And it's quite simple. And no one's saying anything new for the first time, but it's a reminder of stuff that we all need to hear. And if we don't hear it from a parent, an uncle, a coach, we could hear it when we're at any age from anyone that can get us to, you know, I suppose, live our potential, as it were. You know?
No, it's something that's really made me feel good about that, because, like I said, I've done a lot of different jobs, and the concept of, like you said, developing a craft is great. And you know, I think even if your body does fail as a teacher, it's about, again, for me, it's like how close you are to the information, to the data. Like if you've done a forward fold a million times, you've learned a few things about a forward fold. You've done it a few different ways and many different times and places and different nuances to it. And the more you get to know it, the more teaching points you have. You know, because our bodies are different, but they're also quite similar. Same with teaching. If you've taught that many bodies, you know, different shapes of bodies, different sizes, again, you've got more teaching points. You know, you've got a vocab, and I think I don't know where I said this recently before, which was, for a writer, they say you should have, for every one word, you should have 10 more. So for every word you write with, you should have a synonym, 10, ready to go. And I feel the same with teaching. for every one way you can teach, you should have 10 others. You know, strain your leg, engage your thigh, lift up your knee.
That's actually one of the games we do in teacher training, is the synonym game, where how can you say the same thing 10 different ways, and that skill of being able to improvise. I mean, it's a life skill, really, if you can do that, how you communicate. But yeah, it is a fascinating profession, but it's not for the faint. Well, I mean, we're not like out at warfare, but it is not for the faint-hearted. You know, you need to give yourself a kick up the backside quite a lot, and pull yourself up by the bootstraps quite a lot, because you haven't got someone else to do that.
It's also one of those things that it can get too easy if you're teaching a public class, for instance. Not so much you, but if you're teaching public classes at different places, you could probably get away with a similar routine over and over and over and over again.
Yes.
You know, and no one's going to call you up on it. Yeah. Your teaching might not get better, and you might go. There's another thing I learned becoming a teacher. You might start going, well, I've taught yoga 3 times today, so I've pretty much done my own session. Like, no, you haven't. Those are 2 different things. One, you're focused on the people in the room. The other one should be you focused on you. That should be your time. You know, and don't equate the 2. They're different things, and they've got different purposes, and they should be treated differently. You know, don't use that time to get an extra cheeky stretch in or do your handstands. You know, there's a very popular teacher in London, which it's so funny. Everyone always asks me if I know him, for whatever reason. I think because we're in a similar space. We're in London, male teachers. I guess that's their thinking. But from 2 different people, they were like, what do you think of him? I was like, I don't know. I didn't been to his class. I never spoken to the guy. I don't know what to tell you. And they were like, thing is, when you're in his class, you just feel like you're there for his show. So he'll be telling you to do something, but like then while you're busy doing it, he'll be practicing handstands in the back of the room. Like while you're in Warrior 1. Yeah. And then he'll be like, wow, do you see how long I held that? Kind of that kind of thing. And I thought, I don't know what the case is. I don't know. I wasn't there, so I don't know what happened in that scenario. But that to me is quite a extreme version of what can happen when you forget what is the classroom for. The classroom is there for those people. You're there to serve those people. Yeah. Not you, not anything about you. Serve them. So how can you make this as good as possible? Does it require you to do a handstand? Maybe. If someone doesn't get it and you want to show them, maybe that's when you need to do a handstand. Does it require you to adjust them physically? Maybe. Maybe if they didn't get it from the words you were saying, then maybe that is the time. But it's got to be from the perspective of them. What's going to help them the most? And when we go into this mindfulness training tomorrow, I think that was the point I wanted to make to them, is that how could you help students become mindful? So, the argument is, to be truly mindful, you need as little input as possible so that person can learn to do it for themselves. Like you were saying about the dog scratching on the door. It needs to learn for itself how to fend for itself, or whatever the case is. And the less you do, the better. You know, the same with the lady with the hug. But to a degree, you need to help facilitate that. Just like the baby analogy, you come in the first time, you pick it up, you hold it. So, you know, the same with whether it's a class, same thing in a class, you could tell them, I want you to do 4 sun A's. And maybe that is really good for someone who's been doing yoga for a long time and they need to practice internalizing what the cues are. But for someone who's just shown up, there's little to no use of that whatsoever. You know, so you've got to find ways to help the students, and depending on how much they know or how little they know, you have to again react to that.
Yeah, I think it is being mindful as a teacher is so important, because you can find yourself slipping into the narcissistic, egotistical way of, look, how impressively I can do something. And if you can't do that, then maybe try this. And you framed it the wrong way then. You said anything less than this is not good enough. Yeah.
You see, I've done that before. I know.
Oh, same here.
I know exactly what you mean, where I forget.
And I'll do it again probably, and then I'll still turn back and go, no, Kev, it's not good enough.
It's the way, in a way in which you say it.
Yes.
Yeah, I know exactly what you're saying. Like, I think it's better to show the progressive instead of the, in CrossFit they call it scaling. But I think it's always important to show the scaling up, not down.
Yes.
So don't go, okay, here's a muscle up. can't do that. All right, well, I'll do this. You can't do that. Well, I'll do this. See, because then people by the end they're like, oh, I'm doing this one, am I? And everyone knows this is at the bottom of the chain. You know, I know it's no different in terms of where you put it, but I think there's something to be said for going, try this. This is a really good place to be. Like, oh, this is, you know, this will work these muscles. And if this feels okay, then maybe lift one leg. And then maybe that feels really good. Maybe lift the other one. Then, and give them those key points where they can go into. So, I don't know. It's like a silly thing. It's just how you frame it. Same with counting up and counting down. You know, they can feel like different things. And I feel like I've done that before. I've gone, do this, and I've seen someone not getting go, just do this. It's fine. You know, I can imagine they were like, no, I want to do that thing. You know?
But in the context of a public class, this is going back to what you said earlier about doing public classes, and you have a certain tempo you got to stick to, and you can't. I veer on this side of talking a bit too much, explaining things too much, and that can slow things down and make it the class a bit jarring. But I love teaching public classes, but what I've realized is, and to quote Jerry Duffy, I want to keep stretching myself. I can go in and teach a public class now, and I know what I'm doing. Everything is fine. I don't feel pressure really now. Because I have gathered I have so many tools to turn to at any stage. Although the craft of teaching public classes is never going to end. You know, I have way more to improve on, but I know I can teach a good enough one that people will like it and come back, generally speaking. So therefore, I want to see what's next. You know, like teaching a workshop now. I'm due to be teaching a weekend of workshops in May, and that's my first time doing a weekend. And I don't need to blow up. What's the word? Blow up in my head.
Blow your own trumpet?
No. I don't mean to blow it out of proportion.
Gotcha.
Yeah, make a mountain of a molehill, as it were. I've done a workshop. Now I'm doing 3 of them. Simple as that. As opposed to a weekend of workshops, retreats, teacher trainings. The next thing is CPDs. Sorry, continual professional development courses. A CPD is a teacher training just in one day. I can do that, but it's a case of I want to stretch myself, and that's why I've cut back on my public classes, because I want to.
You need space for those.
I need space because I need to plan. I want to do them as well as possible. And it seems like 2 years ago I would have bitten your hand off to get some of these public classes that I've just given to someone else. But you can't if you try. You have to put your energy in the right places. And I think now I'm teaching like 6 public classes. I'm doing a lot of corporates now, actually, which I didn't hardly have any corporates before. And I mean, from a business point of view, they pay very well. Yeah,
much bigger bang for buck there.
Yeah, but they're not necessarily long term. You know, they can come and go. But my point is, Doug, is that, and I said this before, maybe to nausea, but like I never really want to feel like ready, like, oh, I got this. This is a walk in the park. I don't need to think about it. I think like Pat Divilly, him being nervous to me was so inspiring, because I'm like, man, he's really nervous. This means it means a lot to him, and he's stretching himself. And I love that.
That's it. I can't agree with you more. And I think the good stuff happens there.
Yeah.
You know, where you push yourself and you're like, wow, I don't know where I am, but like it's sink or swim time. Got to come up with something. And you do. And I'm the same. At the time, I thought I would never stop being nervous before a class. Like I used to get really nervous, you know. And bless Erica used to have to feel the brunt of that, and she was really good at being supportive and help me. But something had to change in my mind for him, you know. And that came when I was like, okay, has this ever gone bad? I was like, no. I mean, it's not always gone the way I wanted it to, but it's never gone terrible. It's never gone, you know. And I used to rehearse my stuff like too much. I used to be in the shower the night before, going through it at least once, you know, and then I wake up in the morning, go through it 2 or 3 times in my head. And I was like, all right, like enough now. Like, and then you've done the good. Maybe that was, you need to do that at the beginning. I don't know. But I know that I did that enough that now it's internalized. So there's segments of routines that I'm like, oh, we can go to this little segment. I just need to know the first move, and then I know. We did an active training course with a guy called Pascal Weiss, and he said when you write down a washing machine, you don't have to write down the transitions, just write down
When you write down a washing machine?
Oh, yeah. So a washing machine is an acro when you link together a whole lot of moves.
Oh, sorry.
And it looks like a washing
yoga.
machine because the girl or the guy on top is moving, spinning around.
Oh, sorry. Okay.
And he would just write down the moves you go to. He wouldn't write how to transition because he said normally there's some obvious ways. If he can see the first and the last movement, he normally knows what's going to come. You know, because he's done it so often. And the same with us. Like, I know a few transitions now. Like, there's a lot more I want to learn. And there's probably a few different training I'd like to do. But I want to be a lot more specific about whose teach training I do. You know, Bryce E. Decline.
Dice E. Decline, yeah.
Bryce Dice E. Decline.
Yeah.
But yes, his, for instance, I'd be interested in him. I like the way he moves.
Where's that happening?
I don't know. But I'm just telling you, this is on my wish list, you know. Why, you're in. You're coming. You're like, yeah.
I'm a huge Dice fan.
Yeah, I think he does it really well. Like, it's probably from your recommendation, because I had Glow Yoga anyway. So I started doing his stuff. So yeah, like there's a few guys. There's not many though. You know, Crandall's another one.
I like him.
You know, but there's very few in the world.
Dice is quite progressive though. I mean, he does all the mobility work as well. And also, I like both of their personalities definitely. But yeah, they're both really good options. But Dice, yeah, because he can do all the really physically impressive stuff, but he's more interested now in the very subtle, you know, biomechanics, like how can your hip move in internal external rotation instead of
he knows it well, right?
A press handstand. You know, what good is teaching so his thing is like press handstand is great, but can you actually move your hips like they're designed to move, for example? And I really loved that, how it would be so easy for him to go around and just teach handstand workshops and sell out all the time. But instead, he's interested in teaching something that he feels matters. And I really admire that integrity.
Yeah, you do. I mean, even some of his stuff, though, he gets a little bit too technical. You can see he loves it too much. Sometimes he's talking, I'm like, all right, let's go. I get it. Show me what you want us to do, you know?
Yeah, you got. Sometimes you got to read the room. If people start yawning, you're like, oh, okay.
You know,
sorry, everyone.
What's that? You don't. Oh, I'm mistaking you guys for someone who cares. Okay, sorry about that.
But in a workshop, you can do that. In a public
that's
class,
what's the great thing about a workshop is. I mean, a public class is really a hidden hope. It's a Hail Mary. It really is. You're like, all right, I don't know who's coming.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, so here we go. You guys look like you can do that. Okay, let's try this. Nope. Okay, never mind. You know, it's tough, and then it's really hard when you get like a real divide in the room. Also, I don't know why no one respects level 1, level 2, level 3.
What do you mean?
Like, maybe it's the studio's fault. Maybe when they say level 2, it means you have to have gone to at least one class there at this level. Okay? Because you get a lot of guys, I think it's guys who are mainly the culprits. They come with girlfriends or whoever it is, and they're like, don't send me to level 1.
Yeah.
I'll jump to level 2. I'm an athlete. Yeah. And then in the class, they're like, oh, my legs are hurting. Or my arms are hurting. You're like, what is this move? I don't know this one. You're like, yeah, I know, because it's level 2. It was on the door. It said that, you know. And the same with level 3 stuff, you know. I've done a push-up. Yeah, not the same.
Well, a lot of studios now just do open flow. And they say this is suitable for beginners or not suitable. That's about as much as they're going to. This is in Dublin anyway. And therefore, you'll have to teach all the modifications, the regressions, progressions. But yeah, it's I think that's a wiser business move, because otherwise, if you put on a level 3 class, level 4 class,
you're not getting much,
hardly anyone shows up. So it's better to keep it open flow. But Doug, it's dinner time,
mate. I'm so glad you said that. I'm feeling that.
You're feeling it.
I'm doing fasting, so like I've got a window of probably an hour 20 left to eat.
Oh really?
For the day, yeah.
How long have you fasted for now?
No, so I do intermittent fast now. I did the 3-day thing back last month.
Yeah.
And then since then I've been doing 14-10 most days.
What do you mean?
So
not eat for 14
hours. You had a 10-hour window.
Eat for 10 hours now.
Yeah, crazy research on that. Very interesting about how your body's better designed for that, especially with circadian rhythms. Check out Dr. Sachin Panda. He's got, I think if it's not Panda, I'm going to be very embarrassed.
How do you spell that?
Sachin. I'm going to say Sachin is SATCHIN.
Okay.
Panda, PANDA. His podcast on, what's your man's name? The British guy, the doctor, man. live better, feel
yeah,
better, live more.
Doctor. Oh, damn
Yeah,
it!
good luck.
I got his book downstairs.
Yeah, because I know he's someone you look.
Chatter. Oh, I forget his name, but
so he's
one ahead of me in the podcast.
That's why I thought you know him, because I remember you saying that. So he's got him on there, and he's like the expert in fasting and the effects of fasting. Where he calls it time restricted eating, because it's more. It explains it better. But the idea is that your body works very well with that limited eating. You can have the same calories, just in a smaller window, and the obesity and diseases tend to go away.
Yeah,
because your body has time to readjust. Something about your esophagus and your lining of your stomach too. It doesn't do well. It gets damaged every time you eat, and if you never stop eating, it never.
I completely agree. I think fasting is really important. It's just very difficult. So I really admire that you're doing that. So let's break.
Yeah, let's eat.
Because I haven't eaten for like almost 3 hours. I know.
Oh,
I'm feeling
stop the press.
Yeah. Okay, mate. Any final thoughts?
No.
Can I finish with a quote?
Please. Is it one of mine?
No.
Well, I'm less excited now.
Viktor Frankl, A Man's Search for Meaning. Life is suffering. Surviving is finding meaning in that suffering.
Was that him? I would have. You're going to hate this. Do you know who I would have equated that quote to?
Paul Gascoigne.
No.
Go on.
DMX. In the start of his song. It's one of my favorite songs ever.
Rough Riders anthem?
No, it's from the
ruin
album. I'm sorry, but it's a great song. It's a great song of his called
To Live is to Suffer.
But to survive, well, that's to find meaning in the suffering.
Oh, what is that? If we had like
slipping, that's what it's
Slipping.
called.
That is a great song.
I'm falling. I
Can't get up.
Oh, you know it.
Of course.
That's where I know.
You know what? I said to someone the other day, I was like, some lad in Australia, I'll give him a shout. No, shall I give him a shout out? No, I don't know if we're a shout out, but like, but some lad in Australia, another yoga teacher, and he's like, I just called him bro, and he's like, you don't sound like you would say bro. Like for some reason, I think people think I'm posh. They don't realise how street I am, Doug.
I know.
Do you know what I'm saying?
I know what you're saying, but it's only because I saw you stab someone outside before you let me in.
Hey, come on.
Yeah, that's the only reason.
It's my property, right? That didn't happen, by the way, just to say.
Oh, maybe it didn't.
Pleasure. Thanks for coming.
Mate, pleasure. Let's stake it up.
Yeah.